How you doing? I'm Barry Donovan. I'm going to talk to you today about my brand new Audi Q8 because the country club's closed, and I don't know if you can see this, but I got 3 garage door openers here. One is for my beach house, one's for my lake house, and the other one is for my penthouse apartment, all of which I can't travel to. My boy Igor and I were, talking about the fact that we couldn't go to the clubs anymore. So we were talking about our favorite vodkas. And we decided just to get in the garage and sit in the Audi Q8 and start to appreciate all the things that are right about this interior space. And much like VW Audi Group has done in the past, this is a very clean interior. The aesthetic is that of a whiteboard with some wood inlays and fancy leathers. And the one thing I will say is I love the layout of this, but the press car, for once, is not spec'd out the way that you would want it, because this is kind of just this black slab in here with some wood. Now you can do different color leathers, seats, you can do different wood inlays, you can go to the Prestige package and get all the fancy pants lighting, and I think that would really, really tart this thing up the way that you would want to buy it. So in this case, we're in the Premium Plus. So there's a Premium trim level, go figure, a Premium Plus, which is even better. You get the 3D Bang & Olufsen audio, and then you can go up to the Prestige, which bundles a lot of the expensive stuff together. Now, one of the things you probably want to know is the 3D version of the Bang & Olufsen audio system in here. And our audio engineer said, basically, the way that the graphs look is how it sounds. This is one of the better audio systems we've tested objectively. The graphs are close to the Bowers & Wilkins setup and the Volvo vehicles. And the thing is, for me, is the only thing that you can slightly notice is the crossover point from the subwoofer. And there's a little bit of boominess in the bass. Your best setup here is just to leave all your settings pretty much neutral. Leave the 3D audio off because it adds this brightness and kind of hurts the soundstage or the separation. You lose the stereo separation of good music. But again, it tests well, that's the main thing. But if you want to step up even further, you can go to the high-end B&O setup, which is about $4,000 more. And I would say that would bring this up to the level of the Bowers & Wilkins we have tested in the past. Now, everything else feels really good. This is the new Audi cockpit, if they call it. You have a full screen for your gauge cluster. You have the 2 center screens, which they're built into the dashboard here. There's no screen sticking out of the dash. And they rely 100% here on touch and haptic feedback. So when you click on an icon that's active, when you touch it, you get a click in the screen because the screen actually goes down, makes a electronic click to let you know that you've interacted with the icon. Your bottom screen is for all HVAC and some shortcuts. The big negative with this, while it's one of the best touch user interfaces you can get, it's just, all you have to do is look at it. It's full of fingerprints. And with how glossy this interior and center stack area is, it's very, very annoying to look at, especially if you're one of those people that has the cleaning gene. But let's take a look at the other parts of this car. The next part, oh man, the Arby's is coming up. Oh. So anyway, the interior, there's a good mix of physical and digital controls. Most of the things that you need to use every day are readily available. It's not going to confuse you. It's not going to mess you up. It does have a digi-stick. It does have a lot of the core functions tied to the touchscreen. And again, this is modern cars. As manufacturers attempt to declutter interiors for this clean aesthetic, this is what you're going to continue to see. And again, it's internal directives for most companies to do this. Comfort, very comfortable. Now these are the base seats. You can go up from here and get massaging seats and all the other fancy stuff that you want. Again, this is a luxury car. This is about kind of customizing it to what you want. So while I personally wouldn't choose the base seats. I want to get rubbed and massaged and pelted by these little air bladders in here. You can choose that if you want. Let's take a look at the back seat real quick. Take a look at that friggin' door. That thing is enormous. This thing has this sense of like heft to it. But you know, a lot of these two-row SUVs in the luxury segment, you don't have a ton of room in the back, and this is not one of those. I mean, look at the adjustability of this. I mean, it's ridiculous. It slides, I can practice my hip thrusts for my other types of videos I make, and then the back seat reclines pretty well. You don't feel totally upright, and you have HVAC controls in the back, seat heaters, you have vents, you have the speakers from the 3D audio that's back here. I mean, this is just a really comfortable space, and it rides insanely good. Again, which we'll talk about in the shop and on the road. But let's take a look at the hatch space real quick. Yeah, Frank called me on my Bluetooth headset the other day. He's like, tell me about that Q8 rear end. There she is. Look at this cargo cover. And I don't want people seeing my clubs. I don't want them to see the other stuff, so I got a cargo cover. But when you release this, enough said. You are looking at the underbody of the Audi Q8. This is based on VW Group's MLB Evo architecture, which is front engine, all-wheel drive. This is also shared with the Lamborghini Urus, the Porsche Cayenne, and the VW Touareg. And what you're going to look at here specifically from the Audi side is this is one of the most advanced global architectures you're going to find in the world. And why I say that is because there is so much aluminum in this chassis. The body in white, which is kind of the shell that's formed and put together before all the body panels and all the other stuff goes on it. There is so much aluminum on here, from the subframe carriers. All of the plates and panels are aluminum sheet metal that connects the floor pan. The outer shell are aluminum stampings, and then they use hot steel stampings in some of the crash structure and bulkheads. But again, this is all about strength. It's about reducing NVH, and to give the driver of these platforms or architectures, it gives you the sense that this thing is well put together, is the point. Now the front suspension, I already mentioned it has an aluminum subframe carrier, which you typically do not see until you get to the higher end vehicles. All the suspension components are either cast or forged aluminum. The knuckle, the upright, the upper A-arms, the lower control arms, and what you're gonna see here is a multi-link in the front, and it looks very much like a double wishbone, and this is a modification, kind of branching that out. So you get all the great things that you get from a double wishbone in terms of camber change under compression to give you more camber, but you also have a whole bunch of options in terms of how you deal with toe in, toe out based on compression, lateral load, where they fine-tune this, and the amount of money and engineering cost to develop this properly. That's why this is a more expensive vehicle overall, and all the vehicles that are on this platform. But again, you look at things like the 6-piston aluminum front calipers. It has huge brakes. It has a lot of things that are here designed for cooling of the turbocharged engine. And of course, they need to build in cooling for the bigger engines and the S model, the RS model, of course, and the Lambo. So all of that is baked into this architecture. But let's move on to the back and take a look. In the rear of the Q8, you'll see plenty of carryover from the front. All the suspension is aluminum. Your lower control arms, your knuckle, your upper control arms. The only difference here is the subframe carrier is stamped steel. Now this is a multi-link rear, and it does have 5 links, but it still carries over the aluminum plates, the aluminum floor pan in the wheel well arches. There's a ton of that here. Now the next thing to talk about is the all-wheel drive system. With the Q8, you get a center locking differential, and that is responsible for sending power to the rear to an open diff and then power to the front. And it typically operates in a 40-60 split. Now, of course, this is all variable because it is looking at wheel speed sensors to detect slippage, and it will transfer power to the front or back depending on that. It will look at steering wheel angle sensors and all the body control ECUs or modules that tell the computer what to do and where to send the power. So it's not like, there's no way to just be like, I want this to be rear wheel drive. It just doesn't work that way. However, your drive modes will affect certain operating parameters like your transmission performance, whether it's quicker or slower to shift. It also changes the adaptive suspension. In this case, we have coil springs here with adaptive dampers. These dampers have a wide range of adjustment, which is great without having to go to air ride, which again, you can get. The next thing, when you go way up in the trim levels, you can get things like rear wheel steering and things that you probably don't ever need. But again, you can option this out to insane levels. Now, the last thing to talk about is all the NVH material. And typically when you're under here, it looks like every other car, and it's true. They just use a little bit more in the Q8, like in this back section. All your wheel well arches are lined with this thick material. You have vibration isolators all over the place. And this is about, the regular Q8 is about refinement and smoothness. And that's really a highlight. Now, the last part of this is the hidden fine print of all the electronics and the safety suite that can be available and is available on this. If you even just bump or hit a bumper, the system needs to be recalibrated, because there are a total of 5 radar sensors, 6 cameras, 12 ultrasound sensors, and 1 laser sensor that all has to be calibrated into these safety systems. So this is another part of getting into these higher end vehicles. The more you add any tweak to any part of this outside body structure or breaking in a camera, you have to take it to a specialty place or a dealership to have all of this recalibrated. But again, it's just something to know before going into this. Let's take a look under the hood. Under the hood of this Audi, you take a look at this plastic cover, which doesn't come off. It's attached to the air boxes and all that. You'd think there's a V12 under here, and there's not. It's their global 3-liter. It's their turbocharged engine, direct injected. You have aluminum cross bracing supports and aluminum shock towers here. But the big thing is they just don't want you to feel it. That's where a lot of the money and development went into, is the isolators, the motor mounts, all the bushings. That's what they're trying to do. They don't want you to know there's anything under here. But let's take this for a drive and see how it operates. I'm feeling ready to take off in the Audi Q8 V6. This thing has a strange, it's a strange thing, because it is so smooth, it is so refined, everything is isolated from you that you have no sense of speed. The only thing that's going on here that annoys me is there's a little bit of a problem with the window seal here. There's a little bit of noise coming through it. But other than that, acoustic front laminated glass. You don't hear anything from the front. And you know, when this is closed up, when your panoramic is closed, it's just whisper quiet. In fact, I would say the biggest thing about the Q8, obviously in this trim level, this is the Premium Plus, as I mentioned before, the ride quality in comfort mode, the ride quality in pretty much every drive mode has almost every other competitor beat. This is far more refined than the BMW equivalents, and that's one of the reasons why I really like it. For a vehicle like this, that's going to be tackling really bad pavement, poor terrain, city and urban landscapes, you want it to be a cruiser, and that's exactly what it is. The transmission performance, the engine performance is tuned on the softer side. Now, yes, you can change the drive modes, it sharpens things up, but it doesn't have the edge of like the BMW products. If you want a more engaging, quicker shifting, a little bit more NVH from the motor, more aggressiveness from the motor, you have to go to a BMW. But if you want smoothness, that's what this thing is all about. The other thing to talk about is steering. It feels great. Really, it's not one of those that is very darty at highway speeds. It's not overly synthetic where you turn it and like the car just snaps into the next lane. It's a little bit more comfortable, and that's one of the things I also like about the Q8 is they're not trying to make it something it's not. It's not trying to be that sporty performance SUV in this trim level. Now, when you do pound it around, you got 6 piston calipers in the front. Brake pedal is really progressive. There's a lot of vibration coming from this pedal, and it's got 10,000 miles on it, so the rotors probably have a little bit of warpage or there's pad deposits. All the responses of the Q8 are very smooth, progressive. There's nothing here that stands out as overly sharpened, overly firm, overly annoying. and you have this great sense that you are in your own space, that you're socially isolated from the world. Now, the only downer is with this, the Q8s, the Premium, Premium Plus, and the Prestige, you get this one motor and the 3-liter. I'm just going to launch this off the line in comfort just to show what it would be like every day. And that's already at almost 80 miles an hour. And again, it's going to be enough for most people. Last but not least, and I talked a little bit about this in the shop, this has a coil spring and adaptive damper setup, and it is one of the best that I've been in, where you do get a strong sense of good adjustment between the dynamic mode and comfort mode without having to resort to having air suspension, which is more complicated, more expensive. If you're keeping it out of warranty, you definitely don't want to do the work on that. So if you don't choose the air suspension on this, you're not going to have a huge penalty in ride quality. In fact, I think it's very good. But that's enough of the drive. Let's head into the shop and talk about the final thoughts. Final thoughts on the Q8. And there are plenty of luxury SUVs out there, and a few shared on this same architecture. And I think it goes to show you every single one of those vehicles, like the Porsche, the Lambo, they are excellent. And they're excellent because the technology underneath all of these is so flexible to have multiple personalities. You can take one like this, total cruiser, smooth, isolated, refined, comfortable, all the things that you want from a luxury style vehicle, this does. And then I think to myself sometimes, I wish there was more than just the 3-liter here. I wish it was more than this. And then you have the option to go to that with the S or the R line, and you get more motor out of it, you get more excitement, and it still feels great. And I think if you're looking at the Q8 from that perspective, there's something for everybody there, at least in this universe. And I think the other part is, with this press card, it doesn't particularly show off how well you can option this out in terms of the interior. Because when you look at this, the gray interior, and it's clean at least, you know, it's subtle, there's nothing that screams at you, but you can create a lot more personality with it based on your trim level, and this is an excellent vehicle overall. It is so capable in so many ways. Now, yes, it's got an insane price tag, and I kind of thought about how I would option it out, and I was looking at about $92,000. You know, you still have to go up one step on the audio system. You still have to go up one step on the features to kind of get all these things that you really want in the Q8. And I think the people that are going to be leasing this are going to be like just drooling over it. It is really great. And this is the new direction of kind of the Audi Q vehicles, the face of it and the body, the look of it at least. And they've done a good job here, which, you know, it does stand out. Even in like kind of a dull gray color, it still has personality. But you know, there are some negatives, and I think, you know, looking at the interior, the dual screen, as a touch interface, it works well. The haptic feedback works well, but without having physical controls, everything is slower to get around because it takes twice as long to get just basically menu jumping. There's a lot of fingerprints. It's really annoying with all the piano or the gloss black. You always have to interact with this, so it always looks dirty. And, you know, there's little things like that. And they're just usability things that you notice, you know, driving it all the time, and they just don't add up to a whole lot. This is a hell of a vehicle if you can just stomach the price tag. And that's about it. Appreciate you watching this. I'll see you next time.